The Emperor's New Clothes. Once there was an emperor who wanted the best of everything: the tallest castle, the biggest army, the funniest jester, and especially the finest clothes. Knowing this, a clever tailor decided to play a trick on him. The tailor came to the palace with his prettiest silks and satins. "Don't you have something better?" asked the emperor. "Something nobody else has?" "In this bag," the tailor said, "I have the finest cloth in the world. It is as thin as moonbeams and as light as air." "Show me," the emperor demanded. The tailor pretended to pull the cloth out of his bag. "Look at the colors," he said. "Look at the pattern. Isn't it the loveliest thing you've ever seen? Anyone who wears it will feel as if he is wearing nothing at all. And there is one more thing," the tailor whispered in the emperor's ear. "Only the wise can see this cloth. It is invisible to fools." The emperor could see nothing, but if I tell the tailor that, he thought, he'll think I am a fool. Hell no, I'm not wise enough to be the emperor. So the emperor said, "Make me a suit of this cloth at once." The next day, the tailor sent a box to the palace. Inside it, he said, was a suit made of magical cloth. The emperor pretended to put the suit on. His wife could not see a thing. No one could. But they all wanted the others to think they were wise enough to see the cloth. So they cried out, "Wonderful! Our emperor has the most beautiful clothes in the world!" The emperor decided to go on a walk to show off. Now all the townspeople had heard of the emperor's new clothes. They did not want to look like fools, so they clapped and cheered as if they could see what the emperor was wearing. One little girl came onto her balcony. She could see that the emperor had nothing on, and she didn't care if people thought she was foolish. So she said loudly, "But he doesn't have any clothes on! The emperor has no clothes!" People in the crowd heard, and they all realized that nobody could see the emperor's new clothes. "The emperor has no clothes!" they shouted. The emperor's soldiers heard, his servants heard, his wife heard. "The emperor has no clothes!" they gasped. And the emperor heard. Then he knew how the tailor had tricked him. He rushed home. For many weeks he hardly dared to show his face. And to this day, people tell the story of a foolish emperor who took a walk one day wearing no clothes at all.
Hansel and Gretel. There once lived a brother and sister called Hansel and Gretel. Their family was poor, and they only had stale bread to eat. One day, Mother sent them out into the woods to pick wild strawberries for supper. "The woods get dark quickly," Mother said. "Be sure you don't get lost." Now Hansel was a clever boy, and Gretel was a clever girl. As they walked farther and farther into the woods, they dropped a trail of breadcrumbs to follow back to their cottage. Working together, Hansel and Gretel filled their basket with ripe red berries. By late afternoon, they were ready to go home. "Mother will be happy," Hansel said. "But we're out of breadcrumbs," Gretel cried. The birds had eaten every crumb. There was no trail to lead the children home. Lost and afraid, poor Hansel and Gretel at last ate the berries. Trying to stay cheerful, the children made plans for the morning, then fell asleep on the forest floor. When the sun woke them, Hansel and Gretel set off through the woods. They wandered all day long. When they came to a clearing, and there they saw a wonderful thing. It was a little cottage made of cake and candy. Hansel and Gretel were so hungry that they started breaking off bits of the house to eat. They heard a strange voice whisper, "Nibble, nibble like a mouse. Who is nibbling at my house?" Suddenly the door opened, and out came a very ugly woman who was really a witch. Hansel and Gretel were frightened, but the witch spoke so sweetly and they were so hungry that they went with her into the house. Inside, the witch fed them a delicious dinner with all the foods and sweets they had ever dreamed of. They were so full that they soon fell asleep. In the morning, before they woke, the witch lit a fire in the oven. "The boy first," she cackled. "He will be tasty." For it was true, the witch lured children to her cottage and then gobbled them up. After the fire was lit, the witch grabbed sleeping Hansel and locked him in a cage behind the house. After that, she came back and put Gretel to work. "Get up and set the table," she screeched. "I'm going to have a feast." Now clever Gretel saw Hansel in a cage, and as she set the table, she tried to think what to do. "See if the oven is hot," the witch called to Gretel. By now, Gretel had a plan, so she said, "It is stone cold." "That can't be," said the witch, poking her head into the oven. Quickly, Gretel gave her a shove and banged the door shut. Then she set her brother free. Hansel and Gretel ran away into the forest. Before long, they heard their mother calling, searching for them. She was so happy to see her children that she wept with joy. Then they all walked home together and sat down to eat. Their simple supper tasted so good.
Jack and the Beanstalk. There once was a noblewoman who had fallen on hard times. Her castle had been stolen away by a greedy giant, and now she lived in a cottage with her only son, Jack. He was a lazy boy, always dreaming, never working. Mother and son grew poorer and poorer until they had nothing but a cow. Jack's mother told him to sell the cow for a good price, and he agreed. But do you know what? On the way into town, Jack met a strange little man who gave him 3 magic beans in exchange for the cow. Jack thought his mother would be happy to have the beans. After all, they were magic. 3 beans! Jack's mother shouted when he got home. "You foolish boy!" Disgusted, she threw the beans out the window. Now Jack felt sad, and he went straight to bed. But in the morning, when he went to the window, he saw that the magic beans had sprung up into a huge vine. There was nothing to do but to climb it. Higher and higher he climbed, until at last he reached the top of the vine, and found himself looking at a castle that was high among the clouds. Jack didn't know it, but this was the very castle that had been stolen from his mother when he was just a baby. When Jack got there, he knocked. A giant woman answered the door. After taking one look at him, she said, "Please, please, run away! My husband is a cruel giant." But Jack was exhausted and hungry, so he offered to work for food and she let him in. As he was finishing up his dinner, there came a deafening roar. Jack hid in a cupboard just as the giant thundered in, bellowing, "Fee, fi, fo, fum! I smell the blood of an Englishman!" But the giant's wife said, "It's the stew you smell." The giant grunted, and he sat down to his giant supper. At last he finished eating, and his wife brought out a golden goose. "Lay!" shouted the giant, and the goose laid an egg of solid gold. The giant amused himself for hours, commanding the goose to lay her golden eggs. Finally, the giant's wife brought out a harp. The giant said, "Play me a drink," and a drink appeared. "Play me a pillow," and a pillow appeared in the giant's chair. "Play music," and the harp played lovely music until, at last, the giant fell asleep. When the giant was snoring loudly, Jack crept out of his hiding place, grabbed the golden goose and the harp and started to run. But the harp twisted in Jack's grasp and started chiming, "Master! Master!" Jack held tight to the goose and the harp and ran to the beanstalk as fast as he could go. But the harp's cries woke the giant. His feet shook the ground as he chased them. The beanstalk trembled with a terrible weight of him. As soon as Jack was safely on the ground, he cut the beanstalk with one swing of his hatchet. The giant fell to the ground and died instantly. Jack gave the golden goose to his mother, who instantly recognized it as her own beloved pet. Then he said to the harp, "Play dinner, please." A grand meal appeared before them. The very next day, Jack asked the harp to play a gown for his mother, a castle to live in, and happiness to last a lifetime.